All right, I see that people are connecting, so let's give one more minute. All right, maybe we should start. Our webinar today is being recorded, so everybody who's late or missed the webinar can later will receive the recording, so no worries about that. My name is Jack. I'm a business development manager at Giant. Basically, Giant is a robotic process automation company. We are based in Poland, in Warsaw. I'm connecting with you right now from here. The topic of today's webinar will be basically the first steps in robotic process automation. What we need to know to start our journey with robotic process automation, and basically what should we prepare to be ready to start this process. I see that many people are connecting. That's very, very good to see. At the top of the screen, you can see that there is a schedule a meeting button. So during the webinar, you can use that button to schedule a meeting directly with me. So if you have any questions, you can just schedule a meeting and we can discuss all of your questions at a private meeting. Or you can also write the question down in the chat. So without further ado, let's move to the agenda of today's webinar. As I said, my name is Jack. I'm a automation expert at Giant. I'm with Giant for a couple of years right now, and during my time, we've been through many different companies and many different industries with our automation projects, and I will tell you a bit more about that in a second. So we're gonna discuss how to start with our first automation and basically what the RPA journey looks like. So let's move to the first part. Basically, there's a lot of different companies and a lot of the different industries, and the main question is where we can we implement RPA. Basically, the answer is that we can implement RPA in almost any industry. As I said, during my time at Giant, I already had experiences with healthcare, with finance, with banking, with real estate, with government officials like City Hall, for example. So we had many different projects because RPA is basically the whole idea behind RPA is to automate repetitive tasks. So if we have any kind of company who has repetitive tasks, it can be like, for example, generating invoices or sending emails or reading information from a website, we can implement our technology, and using our software, we can create automation out of this. So instead of an employee, a human going every day in doing the same task, we can create an automation out of this. So the employee doesn't have to do it, because if we do the same task every day, basically it's a perfect candidate to be automated. So the main industries that we usually work with are healthcare, finance, banking, travel, insurance, manufacturing, real estate. So basically almost any kind of industry, because everywhere we have processes which are repetitive, tasks which are repetitive, and those tasks are perfect for automation. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so where can we implement, what kind of departments are good candidates for automation? So basically, here there's a couple of departments which you can find in any company, like, for example, HR, accounting, or sales. So basically, these are typical departments in any company, basically. So they all have a unified process. So if we have, for example, HR, we know that HR is going to have to do payroll at the end of the month, right? There's going to be differences from company to company based on the software that those companies are using. But basically, the whole idea behind payroll stays the same. So we know that if a company employs, for example, 4,000 employees, then we know that doing payroll for them might be a difficult task. So we can just create a simple automation, a simple robot using our software, and we can automate this payroll, for example. So robot can collect all the information and just generate all the necessary reports, do all the calculations for the employee, and employee just has to approve the final message. So basically, in any department we can find some kind of repetitive task. Accounting has many examples of different repetitive tasks. Most of those tasks are just based on collecting information from one point and making some calculations. So all of them are basically great for automation. I will give you more examples of sales and manufacturing a little bit later on, so I don't want to spend too much time right now here. And we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So if you have any questions, just feel free to write them down in the chat box below, and we can answer them at the very end. So let's move to the next slide. Basically, what next? When we have a company, we have departments. So what next? We have to know when we are creating our first automation. First of all, we have to identify the tasks, those repetitive tasks which we have in our companies. So we have to know exactly what is the most time-consuming task for our employees. So here is a very important is to just know your company and to do a very deep interview with your employees. So basically, a good candidate for automation would be a company who has this dilemma between hiring another employee or just implementing automation. For example, in sales, right? Instead of hiring another salesman, we can automate processes in sales department, and we can just boost the efficiency of this department. So identification of the process is very important. The most important actually from the whole RPA journey is identification of the process, because sometimes companies have ideas that they want to automate some issues, some problem in their organization, but really, for example, they don't see that they have an employee who is spending all day, for example, generating invoices. So this identification of the process is very important, and we're gonna go a little bit more deep down inside of that later. And here also very important is to know what do you want to achieve, because we have to know what do we need from this automation, right? Why are we implementing automation? So we have to set up some kind of business goals. Like with any other venture, we have to know why are we doing this. So there's different reasons for implementing automation. One of the reasons I already mentioned is scaling up. For example, instead of hiring more employees to do the same tasks, we can automate those tasks, implement automation, and thanks to this, we can scale up our business without actually hiring tons and tons of people. So this is actually a very cost-effective method to scale up your business. So for example, you can maybe you want to boost sales, right? So this is also another thing, or marketing actions. So this is basically depends on you. What do you want to achieve? Many times companies aim for having bigger efficiency, so just to making the process and the flow of information inside of the companies more streamlined, more efficient, without delays, so the information will travel automatically instead of just going through many employees. So scaling up your business, boosting sales, or boosting efficiency is all of those reasons are good reasons to implement automation, definitely. So let's move on. Let me just check the chat. No questions yet, but if you're gonna have any questions, just feel free to write them down in the chat box, and let's move on. So here are a couple of examples of processes in just random examples of processes in which can be implemented in different companies and in different departments. So basically, we have invoice generation, which I already mentioned. This is when a company, for example, has a lot of supplies and has to buy a lot of supplies for different contractors. They have to also pay many different invoices, and even keeping track of with those invoices might be difficult. So basically, anything related to invoicing, generating invoices is a perfect match for automation. Payroll, I already also a little bit touched on this subject, so I won't say this again. But basically, data scraping. This is another really good example of a process which our robots can do with ease. Data scraping can be found in many industries. For example, in banking or in finance or in travel or in real estate. For example, we had a customer who is in real estate. They have a couple of, I think it's a 10 employee company. So it's not a big organization, because they are just real estate salesmen, so they don't need to have a big organization. But one of the employees every day has to go to a website and check new offers for rentals, new offers for sales, for houses, for flats, etc. So this employee has to go every day and spend X amount of time just taking information, just checking information on websites like Gumtree, like different websites where you can find real estate. And he has to go to the same, let's say, 4 or 5 websites every day and check all of those offers and see if they match the ones which they have in their system already. So basically, this was a very repetitive and very not satisfying process. So instead of that, we created an automation, a robot who can just take this information from the website. Every day the robot starts working in the morning, and it goes to all the websites, checks for new offers, compares those offers to the old ones, and generates the report for the salesman. So basically, data scraping, this is one of example, but also stock prices or currency value. This also can be very useful here in that data scraping. And of course, lead generation, which basically means boosting up your sales. So we can create different kinds of automation which can do the first connection with the customer, with the potential customer for us. So instead of doing cold calling or cold email sending or cold sending messages or on social media, we can just create an automation which can do this for us, so that we can just let's set up a target for about 5,000 people, and just program the automation to send those information messages to this 1,000 people. So this can just eliminate the first part of the connection, for the salesman. So the most difficult part goes away using automation. So basically, sales department is also a very good choice for starting your automation journey. And let's move on. Yes, another thing about identifying the processes. Many times companies mistake robots with AI, with artificial intelligence. Our robots are basically just stupid machines which can just do the same task which we program them to do. So basically, our robots are not good in making decisions. They can, of course, make simple yes, no rule-based decisions, but basically everywhere where you have decision which needs to be made, there is a employee which can attend this automation, and he can just decide for the robot. But basically, we always advise our customers to start small. For example, start with a process which is gonna be a simple, like 3-4 step process, because then we can just expand, we can add different elements. Then when we work with the company, we also analyze all the processes inside of this company, so we know exactly which process we can make more streamlined. So this all evolves on this stage of implementation very much. And basically, it's always better to start with a simple automation. For example, a robot which can check your email inbox and sort out all of your email. If you're getting like 2,000 emails per day, you can have a robot which can sort out your emails and just put them in the correct order, label them, etc. So basically, we can do a lot of different things, but simple robots, small automations actually can do a lot of good on your everyday level. When you're working in a company, when you're working with this automation, it can actually boost your efficiency a lot, because you don't have to do this repetitive and boring tasks. So we always advise to start small and expand at a later point. Oh, I see that people are still joining. I'm very happy about that. Okay, I just want to remind you that you can schedule a meeting using the button at the top of the screen. Schedule a meeting. You can directly schedule a meeting with me. If you have some kind of questions which you want to ask and you don't want to ask them here, feel free to use that button to connect with me directly. And let's move on. Okay, so what do we need us from Giant side? What do we need if we want to create an automation for the company? Usually, after we do all those Q&A sessions with the customer, we ask tons of questions. We do department analysis, we do company analysis, and we have the process. We know exactly what we want to automate. Let's say, for example, payroll automation, since we are already using this example from the beginning. So if we already chose the process, we know that we want to automate payroll, then we need to describe this process so our developers can start working on this automation. So what do we need for this description of the process? It's actually very simple, because we just need a description. Every click needs to be described point by point. So if the employee uses the mouse to click on the start button, we need to know exactly that he needs to click on the start button. And if he chooses, like for example, Excel, we need to know that he chooses Excel. So basically, every step has to be described. And plus, additionally to that, also we advise our customers to create a video so they can actually record the screen while they are doing the process. It's a very simple method and it's very effective because then we can actually see everything which is going on the screen. We know exactly where the mouse is going. So if a customer records a video for us and gives us this detailed description, then basically we are almost set to ready to go to create this automation for the customer. The another thing which we need is all the accesses to the systems. Uh, uh, to the systems which you have, which for example might be Xero if you're doing accounting, or SAP, or any kind of different loggings which we might require. For example, if you want to automate some kind of social media, we will need to have this login and password to this social media, so our robots can log in exactly to the same like your employees are doing. So basically, after we have the description of the process, after we have the accesses to all the systems which the robot needs to access, all the process of creating the automation is actually very, very fast, because our tool was created just to make this process very simple. So we focused as much as possible on creating a simple tool which can just automate different complicated process using just a few lines of code. That means that when we have all the all the documentation is correct, if we have all the necessary videos and PDFs and accesses, the process of creating the automation can last just a couple of days. So implementing RPA is not like a super long process. It's not going to take you many weeks or months, or like half a year, but it's going to take, if the documentation is done right, then we can do the implementation in just a couple of days, up to a week time. So let's move on. Yes, so this brings me to our next point: good communication. So as I said just before, when we have all the necessary information, the creation of automation is actually very simple. But the thing is that we just need to gather this information, and this is sometimes where we have difficulties. That's why we just developed this good method of creating videos and descriptions of the processes with our customers, so they can actually do this description of the process themselves. But good communication is key in RPA, because the processes evolve, they change during time, because even if we create an automation for SAP, for example, today, in 6 months there can be an update and something might change. So the layout of the system might change, the functionalities might change, so we might need to do adjustments to the automation, to the robot. So we are also supporting our customers, and we are giving this support, and we can do changes to the process at any point. So we can completely change the process. If the process doesn't need to go run further, we can completely close the process if we don't need it anymore. So we can basically do anything, but good communication is key, because we need to react, we need to change, we need to adapt. So basically this is actually very important. And also in good communication, there's a lot of work which we are doing with companies before we start coding, before we start involving our programmers, which basically is just process analysis, business analysis of their organizations, of their processes, of their company efficiency. So this is also what we do before we start to implement our technology, before we start coding. I see that there is no questions in the chat yet, but maybe at the end somebody is gonna ask a question. I see there are people from different countries. I'm very happy about that. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. I'm gonna also have three case studies at the end, so we can have solid examples of our customers and what we did for them. And after we have a description of the process, after we have all the necessary information, we are creating a POC robot, a demo robot. This is our standard practice, which we do with our customers, just to prove that our robots can actually perform and do the job which they are employed to do. So this is based on this PDF file, based on this video file with the description of the process. We can create, in a couple of days, we can create a demo for a customer, so we can actually show them how the robot will actually work in their organization. So we will know, we can actually show them just in a very short time, very small time. We can show them exactly what will the robot look like, will it perform, and so they can see by themselves exactly what they are getting. And basically after that we are doing the implementation of the robot. So this depends on the customer. So we can implement the robot on a physical PC, like a machine at your organization. It can be any kind of PC, even a very old one, because our virtual machines don't require super, like high quality equipment. They can really actually work on a 15-year-old computer, and they can still operate perfectly fine. That was one of our goals when we are creating the software. So the implementation of the robot can be done at the customer's choice. So it can be at the customer's residence, it can be at their place, at the office of the customer, or it can be, for example, in a virtual machine or in some kind of cloud. We can do many different things. We can implement the robot basically anywhere the customer wishes. It also depends if the robot needs to have internet access or not. If sometimes the process is completely internal without internet access required, but sometimes the robot needs to be connected to the internet. So it also depends on the process and on the customer. And to sum it up, summarize this point, I want to say that the implementation of the robot is only also a couple of days. We don't need a lot of time to implement the robot, because we are creating the code before and based on the information we have from the customer. So when the code is created, when the robot is created, then we just have to implement it at the customer's place of choice. And after that, we do the next step, which is of course adjustments and measurements, because as I said before, when we are implementing RPA, this is always like a living organism, so it changes and it evolves. We need to keep an eye on it and just make adjustments. This is very important because sometimes everything, even to us, seems perfect in theory, but when we implement, we know right away that we need to make some adjustments. But even with those adjustments, implementation of RPA is only a few days. It depends, of course, on the process and on the size of the process. But basically, it's for example, for payroll, for the simple automations, it can be just a few days from start to finish with the implementation. And after we do the implementation, we can of course measure the work of the robot. This is also depends totally on the customer, what form of reporting will they set up for the robot. They can have an email report, so the robot can report them after he finishes work by sending them an email, for example. Or it can be a file generated, so a robot can generate a report file and just put it somewhere or send it to relevant employees. So we can have exactly the way we want in the measurement of the robot. So we know exactly how much time the robot can spend on each process, on each task. So we know, for example, that this process took 8 minutes to complete for a human employee, but it's gonna take only 1.5 minute for the robot when we implement automation, and it can run 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. So the advantages are just huge. But also the great thing is that we can measure this robot exactly what we want, exactly these parameters which are in the interest to us. We don't have to just use some kind of dashboard which is pre-made, which has millions of information which is not relevant to us. So we can have just the relevant information and have the robot report the information as we wish. So now we're going to move to the first case study. Yes, and this is actually something which I touched on a little bit before. This is a company from Poland which manufactures parts for bathrooms, bathtubs. Pretty big company, employing almost over 4,000 employees. And so basically, or like mid-size, maybe a little bit larger company. And the problem which they had was that one of their employees had to stay overtime um, after working hours to generate invoices. So this process took up to 4 hours per day. And as I said, it has to be done after the company closes, so after working hours. So one of the employees had to actually work in the late evening, almost in the nighttime, just to stay and generate all of those invoices. So as a solution, a simple solution, we created an automation which just after a certain time, let's say for example 5 p.m. In this case, robot just automatically starts working, collects all the information, and generates the invoices for the employee. So the employee just goes the next day to work, and they can check if all the invoices were generated correctly. If not, robot can also give us a notification that we need to check those by ourselves. So let me just also show you step by step exactly the process flow of this automation. So number one, the robot opens the system at a specific time after regular working hours, as I said. Then the robot logs into the systems. So this is one of the features which I already told you about of our robots, that they can log into systems, websites, they can log into email accounts, they can do anything. They can log into YouTube, leave comments, they can do anything which a human can do using a mouse and a keyboard. So basically, the next step in this process is that the robot has to log into the systems. A robot then makes a search of the whole inventory for looking for uninvoiced shipments. And then after that, the robot fills in all the necessary information, checks the dates, and performs all the necessary tasks, which usually would be done by a human. And after that, the robot generates the invoice. Then the robot can check the invoice if everything was generated correctly. Sometimes a system might have a glitch and just break in the middle of generating an invoice, and then for example robot could assume that the invoice generated correctly, but it didn't actually. So the robot has to check if the invoice generated correctly, and after that the robot sends this invoice to the customer. So not only that we already have the report for us, but also the invoice right away goes to the customer. We don't need to do ourselves basically nothing in this process. So the robot completely generates checks every day for uninvoiced shipments and generates all the necessary invoices by itself. So this is a great example, and we did this implementation at the beginning of this year, and we are already working on next processes, next automations for the same company. So it's actually a very nice business for us, very nice cooperation. So let's move on to the next case study. This is also from this year. This is a local city hall, local government. And the problem here is that one of the employees, public employees, had to go and create backup files of all the necessary and backup in every system which they had, and they had many different systems, and they had to create backups of all the informations in the systems because they contain pretty much all informations about the residents of the area, like taxes, real estate, debts. So basically every crucial information, and this information also changes daily. So this employee had to create these new logs, new backups every day, and this of course took a lot of time just to create backups of systems, which is not really a very satisfying thing to do. So the solution was easy, just to create a simple automation which can check the databases every day and perform the backup. So let me just guide you step by step through the process. First, the robot opens up all dedicated systems, including logging into those systems. Then the robot performs a backup of all required information. After that, the robot copies the backup files to the online server, so they are safe and they cannot just disappear. Then after that, the robot checks the dates on the server and deletes the old backup files, just to make room for new ones and just to eliminate confusion. And also, the robot can check the trash bin on the server and delete all backup files just to clean up more space. So we also have a very efficient robot in this sense. And after the robot is done, it sends an email notification to the administrator reporting about the results. So basically, this is a very good example of something which sometimes can take a whole day of an employee's work day. And this is absolutely not satisfying process for an employee to be doing. For example, for an IT person working in this local government, this is not satisfying to perform this kind of tasks. Instead of working on fixing bugs in systems or improving different processes. So this actually freed up this employee to perform different other tasks which are more satisfying and more creative to for him to do. Okay, so let's move to the last case study, and after that we're going to be close to the end. Let me just check if we have any questions. No questions yet. Okay, so let's move to the third and last example for today of our case studies. Uh, this is the sales department of a software vendor. So basically, the problem here was in the sales department, as I mentioned. There was a lot of traffic coming from the vendor's website. Customers were filling out contact forms, requesting contact from sales representatives. And all the leads were from different sources, not only from website, but also from social media, from different places. All of those leads were coming into the joint inbox. And the problem here was that not everything was connected together, and basically leads appeared only in those in inboxes, but employees had to go and manually take all this information and then process it by hand, which meant basically very timely filling out the forms in CRM system, which a lot of salespeople don't like to do. So the solution here was to create an automation handling all the leads from all the sources, and basically to distribute them to the respective salesman. So how did it work? First, the robot is on standby. It doesn't work all the time. It's activated via trigger with an email. So when an email shows up with the title lead, this robot is getting activated automatically. Then the robot takes all the information from the online contact form, including the name, email, phone number, and all other information which we would like to have. It can be even this customer's Facebook page or LinkedIn page, anything which you might imagine. We can take from this contact form and put it for the customer, for the sales representative, to the CRM system. So the robot creates automatically in the CRM system the contact card, fills out all the necessary information, including the name, contact information, let's say the company name, the company size, industry, and we can have all kind of different information here. So it all depends on us. We can have the website, we can have many different information at this point. And after that, the robot assigns the lead to a specific sales representative based on their calendars, which is also very important. So the robot can check which of the sales representatives has the most work and who has the least amount of work, and they can distribute those leads accordingly. So we will not give more work to people who are already busy. We can just distribute this more equally, so everybody in our sales department has the chance to sell and to talk to the customers. So after we took all this information from this lead and put them into the CRM system and assigned the sales representative, the robot also sends an automatic email to the lead, to the customer, thanking him for filling out the contact form, and of course telling him that he will be contacted by our sales representative at a specific time. So this is the whole journey of this automation, and it actually saved a whole lot from sales department, because right now we don't have to fill out all the information, but when a lead shows up, it doesn't matter if it shows up from a pop-up or a chatbot or a contact form or social media. It doesn't matter when it shows up. It automatically also goes to the CRM system. So the sales representative, his only job is just to open the card and to contact the customer. So this is actually very, very efficient and speeds up the sales process very, very much. So this actually brings us to the end of our webinar today. So for all the participants of today's webinar, for everybody who joined today and gave us their time, we will have this business process analysis free of charge. So if you have some kind of ideas for automation, maybe you have some kind of issues in your company which you would like to resolve using automation, feel free to schedule a meeting either by using the button at the top, or by using my contact information, which you can see right now on the screen. I will give you a second if somebody wants to scan the QR code or write down the email address or take a picture. So this is your time to do that. And unfortunately, I don't see any questions, but maybe everything was clear today. Next webinar will be probably more oriented in like more like a general big Q&A session, because we have a lot of reoccurring same questions from our customers, basically via emails and via our website. People are asking the same questions, so maybe it's gonna be a good idea to do a webinar just to take the most reoccurring questions and answer those at the next webinar. So in that case, since I don't see any questions, I would like to thank everybody for joining today. It was a big pleasure, and I hope that we can see each other in 2 weeks on the next webinar. And for all the participants is the free business analysis of processes in your company. So feel free to contact me either directly or using the information on the screen. I want to wish you a great end of the day, or maybe good morning. It depends on what part of the world you're connecting with us. Good morning to New York City. It's actually 10:39, so maybe almost afternoon. Okay, thank you very much for everybody and joining, and see you on the next webinar. Thank you. Bye bye.